Now to a Fox 61 exclusive, 2,300 building violations going unanswered. Tonight, residents in Hartford continuing to fight their landlord over them.
Last week, we took you inside the Clay Arsenal apartments in Hartford for a first-hand look at just how some of these areas are unsafe and they're unhealthy as far as living conditions. Today, fed-up residents ramping up their campaign for change. Fox 61's Ben Goldman brought you their story earlier this week and was the only reporter at today's meeting. Ben?
Yeah, Brett and Audrey, new exclusive reporting that we learned today. The assistant property manager of the Clay Arsenal apartments resigned in the past week since we went inside and toured those apartments. This means as more complaints from their residents get filed, the backlog continues to grow. Now, after a recent meeting with the Department of Housing and Urban Development today, crews have been dispatched to fix some of those resident complaints. But the residents say with over 2,300 complaints, it's a little too late.
We have more.
Yulisa Espinar has a 3-year-old son.
He born pretty healthy and now he has asthma.
She says the conditions of her apartment made her son sick. She also just gave birth to her daughter this past fall, and the doctors had to keep her in the hospital for a week due to conditions of her apartment building. And she's made complaints, plenty of them.
I could say around 30 or 40 complaints and nothing resolved. And the things that they say they're going to fix, they don't do it properly.
Organizing the residents, Reverend A.J. Joseph, who attended Monday's meeting with HUD.
In this campaign to get rid of a slumlord in the city who's getting a tax break and federal subsidies, we think that HUD needs to come to the table with more solid penalties for having someone like this in our community.
In the past week, the assistant property manager has resigned, as well as her assistant, making it even harder for residents to get their complaints filed and answered. Mayor Bronin sent out a letter threatening to fine Emmanuel Koo, who owns these apartments, $99 a day per violation, retroactive to the first complaint, a fine around $10,000 a day. But first, there's a certain amount of time allowing Emmanuel Koo to respond to the city and acknowledge their notification.
All we've been hearing about this whole process is grace period. So once the residents alerted him of the disrepair there, they started going out inspecting, and that racked up to 2,300 violations.
HUD is now re-inspecting the units and should be completed by the end of the week. For Joshua Serrano, he's doing all of this for his 10-year-old son.
What I am here fighting for, because I need to show him that this is not normal, this is not a healthy home to live in, and you know, what I show him now is going to determine how he looks at life in the future.
The crews out fixing units this past week, bringing a certain level of hope.
That's great news. It's exciting to hear because a lot of these apartments need work. So it's great when you hear there's been dispersed in the last week. That's great. But our issues are occurring for quite some time now, years.
Now, I did reach out to Emmanuel Koo. I left a message for him. Still have not heard back yet. Emmanuel Koo, the landlord, wrote once back in the fall that all of the violations were fixed and HUD inspected, and almost every unit failed inspection. He then wrote again on April 30th, just recently, that all of the units were fixed and repaired. HUD is currently right now in the middle of another reinspection of those same units. If they fail yet again, which the residents told me they fully expect, since all of those work orders haven't been answered, HUD can pull Emmanuel Koo's subsidy, which would allow every single resident to move, and the federal government would pay for that. But that means a lot of families having to relocate.
And trying to find hard to find housing, it still would be a nightmare for them. And you can understand their skepticism that this work is going to be done and that's going to pass this inspection. What's the time frame we're talking here?
So HUD says that their reinspection now for a second time should be done by the end of this week. But putting a face to some of these stories, that mother who says she had her 3-year-old son, he came home perfectly healthy. Now he has asthma. She couldn't come home from the hospital because the hospital wouldn't allow her to bring her own daughter back to her own house because of the conditions. It's a developing story, and we'll continue to bring you the updates.
Ben, thank you. As I said, they deserve better than that.
That's right,
all right. Hey, a wild